I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce you today to Sharon Ramage. I keep wanting to say her name incorrectly, but she said just like damage. So now I've got it. So welcome today. Um, Honored to have you. And we're going to take a deep dive into your career journey. I've read your bio and such, and I'm very fascinated with the work you do. But I'm going to start by asking you to provide a brief introduction, and then we'll just dive into the questions. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me, Donna. I'm Sharon Ramage, and I'm the owner and founder of the Ramage Law Group. And we are a law firm. We represent families who are going through difficult transitions in their life because of either divorce, custody case, and sometimes they're happy transitions such as adoption. But we help them protect their assets, their futures, and their children. And then we have another aspect of our practice, which is special education law. So we help families with children with disabilities protect their interests educationally, so they get the educational services they deserve, so they can thrive.
That is so awesome. And I would love to hear how you came to be in this industry. Why do you do what you do?
Well, I started out years ago. I was a legal secretary before I even went to college, and I interned while I was in social work school because I started out as a social worker at Child Protective Services, or it's in some states called the Department of Family and Protective Services, Protection Services. But I went to court with the caseworker and was watching everything that was going on, and decided very quickly that I would rather be the one asking the questions than answering them. And so that's when I decided I would go to law school. And I always wanted to combine kind of my social worker at heart with my newfound legal knowledge. So I started out as a prosecutor. I was a child abuse prosecutor for 5 years,
Mm.
and then moved into family law and special education law.
That is so fascinating. And I work a lot with a lot of attorneys, and I can tell you, with you having that social worker background, that makes you a unique person and highly qualified as an attorney. Because I think a lot of people, they just don't have that skill set. So yay for
Mhm.
you. I'm sure that serves you well.
Yeah, it's a soft skill set, and it's kind of a people sense. And unfortunately, with a lot of people who are going through law school these days, they don't necessarily have that people sense because educationally, our higher education and even, kids growing up through high school, we're so segmented in our education, we're not taking enough time to develop those really strong people, I call it people sense skills, street skills. And so I think that's a lot of what the social work background has given me and helped me involved into the attorney I have. And I think it also helps me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I would love for you to share with us the biggest problem that you see in your industry in that divorce world right now and what you're doing to solve it.
Well, there are a couple of things. One of them being a trend towards a lot of people just wanting to DIY and to do it themselves. And there is so much potential damage that can be done. I 100% support people reaching their own agreements, but you don't know all the nuances. And there's a whole lot more to it than just saying who's going to get the pots and the pans. And so not all assets are created equal. Not all agreements are created equal. And there is a little bit of an art to it. So finding that balance where we can help people feel empowered to make their own decisions, but at the same time, for us as lawyers to be as efficient as possible and get them the information as quickly and as efficiently as possible so they can feel empowered, but also give them the legal expertise and the benefit of the legal expertise. So, they know what they're getting into because you really don't know what you don't know sometimes.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. My experience is like if we don't even know what we need to be asking when we're
Mhm,
meeting with attorneys and such.
mhm.
So how the heck are we supposed to navigate the whole legal process on our own? So yes, I'm a big advocate of not doing it yourself and doing more of the collaborative work. I'm like you, we can hire an attorney that's going to be
Mhm.
prepared to litigate, but that doesn't mean we have to, right?
Correct.
So
Correct. And I think a lot of people have this assumption if you go to an attorney, it's going to be scorched earth, and it really isn't. I always tell all of my lawyers that work for me, you have to prepare like you're going to go to court. You've got to get all of your documents together. You need to get everything, all your ducks in a row, because that's what helps you give better advice to people in the long run. And so, what we are finding is if we can front load a lot of that just due diligence and information gathering. And so we have as much data as possible to provide it to our clients. Now, where we can provide a better service to our client, and I think it's kind of the trend where law firms are going and most businesses is better use of technology because that's where our clients are living. And we are very tech forward in this firm. We use as many technology tools as we can to push information out to our clients so they can get it back to us, some of it in real time. And so what we have found is if we can kind of combine that approach, uh, it kind of helps them feel like they are more in charge, but it also helps us get the information we need to really give them a good service.
that is awesome. And I'm going to tell you this, Sharon, you actually just answered, I think, the question that I was going to pose next, but I'm going to ask it anyway in
Okay.
case you have another distinct thing. But I was going to ask, what makes you unique in the way that you help others? And the technology sounds like it fits right into that. But what
I
else
think
would you say?
I think our use of technology is a big one because it frees us up to do other things. I pride ourselves with we are um, candid with our clients at all times. We tell the truth with compassion. When you're hiring an attorney, you're not hiring a mouthpiece. And sometimes we're not going to tell you the things you want to hear. But if you're only hearing the things you want to hear from your lawyer, you're probably not getting very good advice.
Mm.
And so, because our job is to really challenge you, but to also be proactive. One of the things I've always prided myself in and pride my lawyers in is we help you see into the future because it's not just about the agreement you're reaching now. I have a saying when you get divorced, you're not ending your family. You're just changing the way it looks. That's it. And so you're still going to have children you're raising together, grandchildren, graduations, weddings. You're going to have many life events and that aren't going to end when your children are 18. And even people who do not have children, it really, there is a post marriage impact in that relationship you've had with the other spouse, their family. And so we want you to preserve that. But at the same time, look, we don't want you to make decisions in the here and now just be done with it. We want to help you see what decision you're making today and how it's going to impact you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So you get the big picture.
And that's got to be so impactful. I know as a financial advisor working with women in divorce,
Mhm.
it's like just split everything 50-50, but they have no clue what that's going to mean for them. They know what it looks like the day of the divorce, but what's that mean 5 years
Mhm.
from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? So that's great that you're walking them through that process and helping them be more aware. That's just awesome. So where
Exactly. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, because all assets aren't created equal. And so you may think it looks 50-50 on paper, but it could be far from it by the time you tax affect assets or you look at their potential for growth. What's it going to take to get this out of an account? What kind of impact is it going to have on you? What is your ability to recover in the future? One spouse may have an ability to recover much quicker than the other spouse. And it's usually the female that has a harder time recovering traditionally.
Yes, and I agree with that 100%. And it's unfortunate, but that's why I think it's smart for people to, not do it yourself so that you're
Mhm.
making informed decisions.
Right.
Well, tell me, where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years, and how are you staying on top of it? I know the
Um,
technology.
Technology is big. And I see seeing more, just a whole lot more client centered and client driven work. We're having to come to consumers in a different way. For example, I was just in a conference. We were learning about all about Gen Z, and so we have any Gen Zs listening here. I apologize in advance, but what we learned is seventh graders today in 15 years from now will be working in jobs that don't exist today.
Mm,
And so we can't imagine what is going to be out there. And even just the use of technology is changing rapidly with AI and other tools. And we're finding that if we can get tools to our clients and we can overcome our own technology gaps. I mean, you're talking about somebody. I'm a dinosaur and I had to adjust pretty quickly. And we did during the pandemic. I'm one of the few law firms in our area. When we shut down, we the next day were all on our computers at home. We all had laptops, docking stations, monitors at home. And just maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was refusing to even get a second monitor because I thought that was wasteful. Now I can't have enough. And so I think just that adaptability, because
mhm.
things are evolving so quickly. And as we go on in years, I mean, I just never thought about, a seventh grader today is going to be working in a job that does not exist currently. So we can't begin to imagine, which is why you've got to be very prepared to pivot and pivot quickly. And as an entrepreneur, uh, that is kind of my motto. It's like sometimes we don't know what's going to work until we know what doesn't. And yes, we're going to change our mind because things are going to change. And we've got to always be on top of that change, try to be a little bit of ahead of it, but know that it's going to constantly change.
And having the wherewithal to say, I'm okay with pivoting. That's
Oh, yeah,
huge because
huge.
so many of us just get stuck and we're like, oh, I'm not going to do that and learn a new way. So, yay, kudos
Mhm.
to you for that. So, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and ask you this. I want you to share with me what your biggest failure or challenge has been that you faced to this point in your life,
Wow.
whether that's personal or professional, whatever, and how that shaped the way you're doing business today.
Wow, I didn't know this one was coming, so I'm going to have to think a little bit. But I would say one of my, it's kind of a series of things. It's because things I would think that were failures really aren't. It's, what is it? The first attempt at learning? Is that the phrase? And
Yes.
so I would say starting out and thinking I was going to be going down one path. I was only going to be a prosecutor. I started as a prosecutor, got very, very burned out and just like, I can't do this anymore. And the only thing I knew at that point in time was that area of law. And and so I didn't feel like I could really do much, but I knew I wanted to leave my job and start over. And so I had enough money in my bank account to live for 90 days without changing too much of my lifestyle. And I thought, well, I'm just going to learn a new area of law. And so I started learning family law and special education. And I committed that I was going to take myself to my office every day with books. And that's when we used to use books. You didn't do all the electronic
Right.
research.
Mhm.
And I was going to do nothing but read and study for 90 days. And then I would start taking cases and I was going to be easing myself into this while I had a nest egg. And that whole idea of this is what I'm going to do lasted less than a week because people started saying, oh, call Sharon. Sharon will help you. I had never touched a special education case at all. Went and met with a couple of different people. And because somebody told me that, hey, Sharon, you'd be good at this because you really like working with kids. You like working with families and kids, your social work background. This all fits in well for you. And so I went and started talking to people and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. The law is kind of nerdy law because it's pretty complicated and you
Mhm.
feel like you're doing a lot of good. And so I started getting cases almost right away. And because I wasn't afraid to just jump out into the unknown, I became very successful and very sought after, and in a very, very short period of time. And so that would be, I would say that was kind of a big tipping point for me. And since that time, anytime that I've kind of come up on something that's new, I kind of go back to that. It's like, well, I had that 90-day period where I was just going to learn, and it worked.
That is all. That's such an awesome story. And this is the thing: is you were brave. You knew you didn't want to keep doing what you were doing, and you stepped out and took a chance on yourself. And then the floodgates opened.
Right. I can remember standing in the hallway at the district attorney's office, and one of the chief prosecutors said, "Well, do you have furniture?" I was like, "Well, not yet." And I was opening my office in a week. He said, "A file cabinet?" I was like, "I'm getting one." "Do you have any clients?" I'm like, "Well, no, but they'll come." I was just like, and that's what I was thinking internally. I didn't say those things on the outside, but my inside voice is like, I hadn't thought about that. I had a chair and a desk, but I hadn't thought about all these other little things. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to figure that one out. And so, but fortunately, I've always had the gift of being able to figure it out as I go along and not being afraid to take steps out before I know exactly how it's going to work out. You can't be an entrepreneur and have to and be in a position where you feel like you have to know exactly how things are going to work out before you leap, because you a lot of times you're leaping with a whole lot of faith, and but also the knowledge that, yeah, if it doesn't work out, there's going to be something else that will. You'll just shift. And that's why I always tell my everyone in my office laughs, because my favorite saying is, sometimes we don't know what works till we know what doesn't work, and that's okay.
And I love that phrase. I'm going to have to borrow that myself. And I can personally relate to it because I grew up as a perfectionist. So I call
Mhm,
myself a recovering perfectionist now.
mhm,
And before I would not do anything until everything was perfected. And
mhm.
that's not doable. I mean, we can't, we just cannot,
You
nothing
miss
gets
the
done.
boat. You miss
Right.
the boat if you do
Right.
that.
Absolutely. And that's what I learned. So I was able to pivot and was proud that I
Mhm.
did. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, here's another question for you. If you could have lunch with one person, anybody living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Well, right now, my favorite person that I read, and I just really want to learn more about, like, leadership and man from a business perspective, is Patrick Lencioni. And I'm a huge Patrick Lencioni fan because I've learned so much from his books on the management of people and team culture, and just developing a team, that I would really love to just like go pick his brain, have dinner with him, just pick as much of his brain as I could and come away
Mhm.
better, because I mean, that's what I'm reading right now, is pretty much every Patrick Lencioni book known to man.
And what's your favorite?
The five dysfunctions of a team.
Okay. And I'm making note of that because I'm actually in a business book club. And
Mhm.
that sounds like that might be a good option for
The
us.
the ideal team player is also very good, because it talks about the ideal team player being humble, hungry, and smart.
Oh, love that. Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Everybody will be looking for those books now, I'm sure.
I put a
So
plug
tell
in
me,
for it.
let me ask you this question. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about the work that you do, or are even interested in working with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Oh, that's great. Well, they can go to our website, which is www.ramagefamilylawfirm.com. Our phone number is 972-562-9890, or they can email our office at family@ramagelawfirm.com.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And y'all remember, Ramage like damage. So we won't forget. So awesome. Well, I certainly appreciate you being on the show today, Sharon. It was a privilege to get to know you. Thank you again for participating.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.